Vexx, the PS2 platformer that time forgot. Today I wanted to talk about Vexx. This is a game from my childhood that not many people speak about, or not really anyone knows about all that much. It's kind of flew under the radar from my understanding. I don't think it sold super well, but I wanted to talk about why it's such a spectacular game and why I have such fond memories of it and why I think it deserves better than the treatment that it got. So basically, the premise for the video game Vexx is that there's this world called Astara, and basically the people of Astara build this portal that opens a rift that allows them to travel to other worlds. However, when they opened the rift, they opened a pathway into the Shadow Realm, where the Shadow Wraiths live. And the Shadow Wraiths are essentially these dark creatures that feed on the life force of other living creatures. So the Shadow Wraiths come into Astara and destroy it, breaking the entire world apart and murdering most of the planet's population. One of the final victims of the Shadow Wraith invasion were Vexx's people, who lived in a place called Overwood. And basically, Vexx and his people were enslaved by the Wraiths and forced to toil in the mines. Vexx's grandfather, Vargas, tried to fight back and was killed by the Shadow Wraith leader, Yabu, who is the leader of the Shadow Wraiths. The Astari people did enter into a war with the Wraiths and did manage to wipe out a whole bunch of them. However, Yabu survived, and he's basically the remaining Wraith leading the assault on the world. It seems all of Vexx's people were wiped out also as a result of Vargas's defiance. Vexx eventually seeks out vengeance on Yabu and finds the Astari War Talons, which are an ancient weapon that gives Vexx the ability to fight the Wraiths. The Talons are a set of gauntlets with claws on the end, and they are the primary weapon that you will use to fight enemies in the game. Vexx is eventually revived and woken up by an old man named Darby. He doesn't really go into much detail about himself, though he does inform Vexx that his whole village was wiped out by Yabu while he was unconscious, because when he took the Talons, it resulted in an explosion which basically wiped out the whole village. And later on in the game, basically, it's shown that Darby was Yabu the whole time in disguise, which leads us into the basic premise of the game, collecting Wraith Hearts. Because during the war between the Astari and the Shadow Wraiths, like I said, most of the Wraiths were wiped out. However, a Wraith's heart lives on even after it dies, and the heart contains a lot of energy in it from when they fed off the Rift Gate. So basically, Darby tries to get Vexx to collect the hearts and add them to the Rift Gate to basically stop Yabu. However, he was really helping Yabu the whole time because he was being deceived. The game plays very much like what you would expect from a platformer. There's climbing, there's jumping. The Talons give you some combative abilities. You can slash at enemies with your claws. And, the gameplay is what you would expect from a platformer. But the reason I think Vexx shines more than a lot of other platformers is in the presentation of its world, its atmosphere, and its music and this just the set pieces you go through as you explore the game. You go to all these different places, such as Dragon Reach, which is this barren desert where you have to scale this massive skeleton of a dragon that died long ago, and the entire thing just oozes atmosphere. Like, you can tell this place used to be full of life, but some sort of horrible event happened that rendered everything there extinct. Was it the Shadow Wraiths or something else? You know, the game leaves a lot of that stuff open-ended and leaves you wondering, you know, what happened here? What was this place used for? Who were the people that used to live here? You know, who built these mechanisms? You know, the world is just packed full of mystery and fantastic design. Like, all the worlds are so different and diverse from one another. There's a level called The Below, which is this strange dome filled with water. It's like a self-contained ocean, and you dive inside and you swim around and enter into these various different entrances to go to your mission. And I remember seeing this massive piranha whale looking thing swimming around in the water and being terrified of it as a kid. And what's more, if you get too close to it, it will eat you, but you don't die. You wind up inside the thing and you run into these random pirate dudes with a treasure chest, and basically you have to use some sort of combination to open the chest. I've never been able to do it, so I couldn't tell you. But this game is just full of so many just out there moments that just sort of come out of nowhere. Like, there's this enemy, this giant goblin thing in the game that you run into, and there's really, he just kind of comes out of nowhere. And the way in which you beat him is you punch him in the balls, and he just falls over and dies. He falls over and dies. Oh my gosh, it's just crazy. And then in another level, you're in a giant's house. It's called Tempest Peak Manor. It's one of the best levels in the game. And you're in this giant's house, and you explore everything. It's just so cool, the environment. You go down his sink, down the drain. You run across piano keys and go inside the piano and get transported into this weird music world. There's even a giant game console in the house with a big TV that you play. It's crazy, man. Like, Vexx has some of the best level design, like, I've ever seen in any game. And it's just, the whole time you're playing, you're asking yourself, well, just, what was this place for, and what happened here? What is the history of this place? Like, everything you see just makes you want to question everything. Basically, to conclude the story, once you collect 60 Wraith Hearts, I think it's 60 anyways, I can't remember, it's been a while, but you collect a certain amount of hearts, and then suddenly you're ambushed by a warrior who attacks Darby. Darby reveals himself to be Yabu, and he betrays Vexx and stops the warrior fairly easily. Now, the warrior's name is Rhea, and she's the last of the Astari. Yabu takes her staff, which is apparently some sort of magical artifact capable of reopening the Rift Gate, so that the rest of his wraiths can come through and destroy what's left of the world. So you travel to the final world, and Vexx faces down Yabu. Now, Yabu has Vexx's grandfather's spirit imprisoned in his amulet. So during the fight, Yabu eventually loses the amulet, and you get supercharged, and it's just such a cool thing. And you have like infinite energy blasts that you can shoot out of your hands at the enemies. I would just like to point out that this boss fight, the final boss fight of Vexx, is bar none the hardest boss fight I have ever done in my entire life. let me tell you something. If you think you've played challenging games before, if you think you've fought challenging bosses before, none of them have anything on Yabu. This guy cheats so badly. Like, you have to be so precise and so perfect in your movements or else you're going to die. Like, he has multiple phases to his fight. First phase, he summons a bunch of these little shadow creatures that crawl along the ground, and the only way you can safely take them all out is by performing this, like, leap, jump, ground blast attack. Way harder than it sounds. Then after that, he turns himself into this massive spider creature, which is when the real challenging part of the fight happens. He launches fireballs at you, he slashes at you, like, the whole thing is just so cheap and so difficult. I mean, oh my gosh, if you want a challenge, fight Yabu. I guarantee you will be resetting the game 100 times over. Like, this guy is no joke. A cool detail about when you finally do finish Yabu off is when he's dying and fading into the ground, he gives a thumbs up, which is a reference to the Terminator 2 film. It's pretty cool. But basically, Vexx beats Yabu, and the rift gate starts to close, and Vexx can't make it out in time, but he does manage to throw the key staff back through, so the wraiths can't get into the world anymore. Rhea sort of carries on and sort of, I guess, memorializes Vexx as the game sort of closes out with her speaking about how, you know, the fight is still going on for him, and now he's trapped in the shadow realm. And the game ends on such a cool cutscene. You see Vexx just scurrying up these rocks, and he's surrounded by all these dark creatures, and he's just so defiant, and he punches the screen, and then the logo for the game appears, just Vexx. It's so cool. It's such an awesome thing. The reason I think Vexx seriously should come back in some form, either through a remaster or a port or something, is I feel like most people just never got the chance to play it, and that's why it's mostly forgotten. Like, I feel like if more people played it, they would definitely see the merit of the game, and definitely maybe the game would have a second chance at life that I think it deserves. It's tough to describe Vexx. It's so out there, and there's no other game with a better just atmosphere than Vexx. The music, just all the crazy puzzles you have to do, it's absolutely fantastic. I think that's about it as far as my points I wanted to make. I don't know, I just felt like talking about Vexx, because no one else does, and I think that needs to change, because it's a great game, and it deserves another shot in my book. I don't know who owns it anymore, because Acclaim used to own it, and I don't think Acclaim exists anymore, so I don't know who has the rights to it or what, but they should definitely put the game back out there. Sort of test the waters with just porting it and making it available, maybe on the PlayStation Store or something like that. That's how I would start things off, just sort of to test interest in it, and if it sells well enough, consider, putting out a sequel. I feel like that'd be pretty cool. But yeah, that's Vexx. I love this game. It's a big part of my childhood. And I hope you give it a try if you listen to this. Thank you for listening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, and I'll be back again with something else. Peace.